from outside of Nashville. I don't sound like it because I didn't grow up there, and I don't want to. But I can pull it off if need be. But she spent some time down in Nashville, and then she came back up, and I have the privilege of working with a significant amount of your downline and a ton of your upline. She comes from an amazing organization. So I'm really excited for you to get to hear Heather, because she's speaking on resiliency. And I felt, I gave her a choice, but I knew I wanted her to choose this one, and so it worked. One time that didn't, and I actually had to be like, I'm sorry, I really didn't want you to do that one. But I just wanted you to think that you were in control, but you're really not. I am. But she's going to talk on resiliency, and I will tell you, if there's one of these that I know that makes presidentials, it's resiliency. They're just masters of resiliency. They're not better than you. You get that, right? I get that all the time. They're the pretty people. All the time. I get it. You saw pictures of them on a boat on the Danube. You also know they were using a filter. Nobody's stomach looks like that, Dana Moore. Nobody. I said it. He got nervous. It's imagery, friends. Believe me, at the end of today, what I post on Instagram, it's going to be amazeballs. Somewhere in white pants. Anyhow, so thank you for that. So I want you to meet my friend Heather. So Heather, come on up here. And this is really special for me because she does come from this amazing city. You want this, right?
Yes, this. Give me all of the tools, all of the tech, please. I'm going to take steps though rather than hop.
Yeah, I'm not hopping without an ER visit either.
All right, thank you. I can journals, so I'm going to have some water up here. She said that she gave me the choice. She's lying to you. She did not give me the choice. She gave me a choice, and when I picked it, she called me back and said, sorry, someone else has that one, so you're doing this one. She's remembering now. And guys, this isn't anything that I've ever given thought to, that I've ever just thought and studied and read about. You want me to get up and talk about identity issues, finding purpose, things I'm passionate about, raising kids, being married. Like, I can talk about that stuff all day long. Strengths, I'm obsessed with strengths. I'm going to talk about strengths a little bit in just a minute, but not ever spent time on this one. And so she introduced me. I'm going to introduce myself. Which button do I forward? There it is. Okay. This is my sweet little family. My husband Reagan and I have been married for 15 years, and we've got 4 kids: Reese, Ty, Tess, and Presley. And I don't know if you can kind of see them in that picture there a little bit. And we live just north of here, so I was born and raised in this area. Moved away for 12 years. Never thought I'd come back. When you're in Nashville, who wants to live in Nashville? But we endured to me. Okay, come on up. We'll take you up here. But indeed, we did come back just about 4 years ago. In September, we moved back up here, and we're going to talk a little bit. I'm going to ask you a couple questions. I want you to be thinking about them as we talk, all right? I'm going to give you some tools and some things to hopefully be able to take some action toward the things we talk about. Because I don't just want any of us to get up here and inspire you and feel really good and motivated. I want you to be able to actually go do something with it. So I'm going to ask you guys to identify yourselves in just a minute. Let me give you an example of what I want that to kind of look like, where I want you to kind of have your minds. I'll start. A few things about myself. And it says right under here, I am a Jesus follower. I'm a wife and a mother. I'm a Diamond Wellness advocate. And so if you know anything about me, if you're on any of my social media, that's what you're going to see. You're going to pick up on that stuff really quickly. Now, the reason that I share those things with you is because those are the things that influence the way I think, the way I bounce back, the way I shape situations. And so that's one of the things that I'm going to have you thinking about, your identity as far as that's concerned. Something else that I feel like it's important for people to know about me, my husband is so good to me and he loves me so well that I'm all into all the details. And so when we get into this conversation, like a conversation, about something or an argument about something, and I want to like just go right to the core every time. There is a deep, debilitating thing that is causing us to have this disagreement. And he's like, babe, can we just load the dishwasher? You know? That's just how I am. I really wish I was making that up, but it's just not the case. And so as we talk today, you need to know that where I'm coming from is I want you to try to get to the core. All right? To the core of the things that we're talking about in your heart. I want this to come from inside of you. And so those are a few things about me, all right? But I want to get to know you guys too, so I want you guys to all do this with me. Raise your hand if you're married. You identify as a spouse there, all right? Raise your hand if you're single. All right? We've got single people in here. Raise your hand if you have children. All right? Raise your hand if you've struggled with infertility. Raise your hand if you've ever been in counseling. Raise your hand if you think maybe you should have been in some counseling. A few more. Raise your hand if you've ever had your heart broken. If you've ever had your heart broken. If you've ever lost someone close to you. If you've ever been divorced. No? Any cancer survivors here? Oh, give these people a round of applause. Any illness? Any caregivers in here? Any children with health issues or learning disabilities? So we've got a room full of people with a multitude of experiences that have shaped the way that we think and the way we see things, that shaped our perspective. And then sometimes it shapes how we're either able to get back up or whether we stay down. But we've all come from this place that we can share that we've all been through some stuff. And so, 2 questions I'm going to ask you if you can't read any of this. If you can get real clear, and I love this because we're totally piggybacking on some things that we've already heard this morning. If you can get real clear on what it is that you want from your life, at its core, what would that be? Something I want you to think about while we're talking today. And then the second question is, who do you say that you are? Who are you? We talked a little bit about the identities. It's kind of from that place. How do you identify yourself? All right, so resilience. Oh, it worked. Watch Bozo. He's bouncing back real fast. You guys will probably think of somebody that is resilient. Mayor said it a minute ago, is they're like the pretty people, right? They're those people that are strong. You never see them sweat, and they bounce right back really quickly. Things just don't bother them, right? They just look like they have got it all together. By definition, we'll read this together, it's the quality of recovering quickly from failure and adversity, but not just returning to their status quo, actually using that opportunity to grow and then be better than they were before. That's really how we want to think of resiliency. So it's not just that you can come back, it's that you're going to come back and you're going to be better because of the thing that you went through. Like I said, up to this point over the past couple weeks, I hadn't given much thought or really identified with myself as being someone that was resilient. And as I had to start spending time in it, it wrecked me a little bit. Because it brought me back face to face with some things. I deal with my stuff, but I thought I dealt with it. I kind of thought I was done with it. And little did I know that God had an even deeper layer. You know, like how you peel the layers of the onion back and you think you're going to be good, and then all of a sudden there's a whole other layer to deal with. That's where I was this week. The past month, I have spent the past month prepping for a week of VBS. Our VBS is attended. Our church has been around 4 years. I'll get into that more later, but about 300 kids or so. And then we finished that busy week up, and then I went into a week of camp where I took a bunch of teenagers and some counselors, and we took them to camp for the week. And I got back really late, and then all of a sudden it was like, time to get ready for this. I literally had not been able to look at it or prepare up until the past week. And so this past week, on top of the exhaustion that has been my life in the month of June, emotionally taxed some stuff on me. I had to come back to face some things that I thought that I had already been done with. And here's what I learned this week. I began to see with even deeper clarity how my story and the things that I have walked through, it gave it more purpose. It gave it more purpose. And I'm all about that. I want my life to count for something. So that actually, even though it was a little wrecking, it was really exciting for me to be able to see Looking back, I'll give you an example. When I was in the 8th grade, and my family was involved in a car accident. And my brother's jaws were wired shut for 6 weeks. He was like 6 or 7 years old, and the woman in the other car in the passenger seat, she didn't make it. But here I am as an 8th grader, walking around, unfazed, giving paramedics phone numbers and names and contact information, right? So I'm like, oh, okay, that's what resilience looks like. I could remember that experience doing that when I was a kid, right? And so then it makes me ask the question, well, is that something that people are just born with? Do you just have to be born with it? Is it just innate? And the more I read and listened and studied, the more I've realized I don't think it is. I think it's something that can be developed in anybody that's willing to put a little bit of work and time into it. But the thing is that for a person to develop that and cultivate that in themselves, they are going to have to have come through a whole heck of a lot of stuff. They have to have experienced the hard things, the adversity, in order to be able to build that. I'm not sure I'd ever really made the correlation before between resiliency and belief. But now here's what's something I've realized is that you can't have resilience without getting real clear about what you believe about yourself. All right, I told you I love strengths finders. Raise your hand if you've taken your strengths assessment. Yep, all right, so you all know your strengths. I already know, my girl Minty's in here, I already know her answer to this question, but how many of you guys got your top 5 and then you were like, I hate these? Belief is actually in my top 5, right? And I wouldn't say that I really struggled with belief, but as I dug into this week, that factor of resilience being part of that, I wasn't too sure how I felt about that, because to me, as I began to identify with resiliency, it was always a negative thing to me. It was the part that made me stubborn. It was the part that made me hard-headed. My mom's in the room today. It's going to be the part that I never took no for an answer at growing up as a child. I would have thought that it was the part of you guys, I struggle with empathy. And I struggle, do I come across to people as if I don't care? Because I do. So I would have viewed this resiliency as something negative in me. But the thing is that part about my perspective is what causes me to be able to look past a struggle and see the hope, and then just go straight for the hope. Like, the struggle, we're not going to sit in it. We're just going to get up and we're just going to wade right through it in whatever way we can, and I can see the hope beyond it. And I wanted to just draw attention to this for a second, because you are your worst enemy when you are sitting at a point like that, when our negative thoughts are the things that hold us back. It's nothing else. It's the things that we tell ourselves about things that we've been divinely designed with. And so it was the part of me that I had thought was just a difficult, negative thing, and what I would have assumed it was just something that everybody was capable of, that everybody had in them. And so I've learned over this past week that it's actually not something everybody has. Something can be developed, but it was a trait that was developed in me along the way. And as I looked and I thought about it, it's a trait that I see in my siblings, and I'm like, wait a minute, this has been modeled for me my whole life. And I realize now, well, let me give you another example of what it looked like. So this is my dad and my mom, and this is 5 of what is now 14 grandchildren on my side of the family. This picture was taken about, I think 2011 was about the year that it was taken. 4 years before that, in 2007, my dad, at the age of 46, had been diagnosed with a cancer called plasmacytoma, which then eventually turned into a cancer called multiple myeloma. And so, for 7 years, he battled and he fought this cancer. Now, my parents got started super young, all right? Mom and dad were married. I was 9 months old. Mom was 18. Dad was about 20. And then over the course of the next 7 years, they proceeded to have my siblings, right? So 24 and 27, they've got 4 kids. You can imagine when they get my baby brother out of the house, they're excited, right? He's graduated high school. The last one's gone. We're in our mid-40s, and we're going to go live life. And so my brother finished his 1 semester of college, and at Christmas, my dad's cancer diagnosis was shown up. And yet somehow what should have been devastating, and it was, and news that you receive when it's not in your plans at all, just sucked, right? It's just like, why? Like, we've raised our kids, we've done all this the best that we can, started so young, and now, cancer. But instead of taking that perspective, we watch them lead out with positivity. We watch them lead out and just decide, we're going to fight. We're going to fight this. We're going to do whatever the next right thing is, because that's just what we've always done. Whatever the next right thing is, we're going to pick ourselves up by the bootstraps, and we're just going to march right ahead. Their perspective on that was so astounding, and I don't think I realized, and I don't know that they realized, that the way they led us out in that began to model for us how to walk through hard things. To where it was just something that was a normal and natural thing and for us to do. And so it shaped my approach on different situations. It shaped how I would respond to the next things that would come on throughout my life. Because we don't have much control over our lives. We don't have control over our circumstances. We don't have control over our health. We don't have control over how people treat us. We don't have control of who shows up to our classes. We don't have control if we get along with our uplines or our downlines or our sidelines, because nobody else deals with that, do they? Okay, thank you. So if you don't like something, you can change it. But if you can't change it, then you're going to have to change the way you think about it. We live in a society that says, follow your heart and follow your dreams. But I think I want to challenge you today that instead of following, maybe it's time for us to start leading them. That sometimes we have to tell ourselves what to think when our heart and our experiences might put things in our way that we don't need to hear. That instead of letting our circumstances swallow us, and instead of letting things keep us in those places, maybe we need to focus on getting back to answering that first question that I posed. So I already know you're not going to be able to see it. Maybe you can better this time. But the first question that I posed is, what is it that you want? And Dan touched on this, and I just thought it was great. It was such a great tie-in. If you can answer this question today and get really clear on it, you're actually going to be doing a lot better job than I could, because it took me a while. When I first started to answer this question for myself, the vision board and all of that stuff, it looked like I wanted the fixer-upper house, right? Any other Chip and JoJo fans in here, right? Like Joanna Gaines definitely is my spirit animal. I love that woman, okay? I can't wait to get to Waco. I still have not been there. But it looked like the perfect fixer-upper house. Okay? It looked like achieving diamond rank, because that was significant, right? Because significance is in my top 5 strengths. It looked like that for the money, okay? And so I set off and I did it. And my mom and I laid all new floors in my house. And I had a deck built on the back, and I'm constantly doing stuff. And don't get me wrong, my husband laughed at me when we told him about this, because I'm still always going to be doing stuff to my house. I love to DIY. I do it myself, or I get mom and them to help or whatever. That's not going to stop. But I did that, and I hit diamond rank, and I walked, all right? And all of this was accomplished, and then somehow it still wasn't enough. Somehow I still was not fulfilled. And so I remember sitting at leadership in 2018, up in the diamond seats, feeling very empty and alone in a place where everybody wants to be sitting, right? And I remember coming home from that and sitting at my desk, and I just got quiet and I got still. I said, Heather, what is it that you want? And this came out from my heart onto a piece of paper, into the journal I had just come home with from leadership. And if you can't see it, I do like to doodle. It says, make your home a place of joy. Places where people can come and be mentally peaceful and physically fulfilled and spiritually renewed. And so, I lost my place in my notes. I got really passionate. I began to realize that I was spending a lot of time and energy in making this house, but I wasn't really focused on making the home. And what I began to realize is what I was really longing for were the connections that could happen because of that home. And so the more I got clear on this, and here's where I want to tie this all together, the more I got clear on this, the more my perspective began to change. And as my perspective began to change, what I wanted started to change. What I thought I wanted wasn't really what I wanted anymore. It was to be able to pour into people. So as you answer this question for yourself today, what is it that you want? Is it possible that you can look past those things that may be on the surface and look a little more deeply to see what they really might be at their core? And then I want to challenge you to look around at your life and right where you're at and find where they already are. The next question that I asked you guys is, who do you say that you are? Now, I want to take a break for just like 1 second. I just want you to introduce yourself to the person next to you. And I want you to, as I began in the beginning, tell everybody a little bit about yourself. Take just a few seconds. Go ahead and do that. Achievers. My daughter, who's almost 12, is literally raising my 3-year-old. Like, she's perfectly capable of that. And I'm fine with it too, because I've got 4 kids. I'm really be able to use the brakes sometimes. But we want to excel at everything, and we really like to please other people. Yes, we are people pleasers, right? This trait showed up in me almost to a fault, in the fact that until I was in my mid-20s, I didn't have a mind of my own. My sister planned my wedding. I told her what colors I wanted, but she's nodding. She's like, yep, I did. I just like, I want to get married to Reagan, and you guys just, whatever you want to do, that's fine. Because I just was, will this make people happy? Will they think my wedding was pretty? You know, as I was growing up, I received a lot of affirmation in my appearance, in how, I was able to play the piano, and I sing, and all of that stuff, and so did I make you happy? Right? That's where my value and my worth came from. Until I was about in my mid-20s. No one would have ever been able to look at me as a teenager and think that I was just in the throngs of insecurity and of identity issues because I was good at stuff and I was outgoing, right? It didn't faze me to talk to people. I had a little bit of personality, but I worked really hard at dotting all the I's and crossing all the T's so that anything that didn't look pretty, I could clean it up really fast and I would be pleasing to whoever it was that I was looking for that affirmation. I learned really young how to play the game that says, everything is awesome, everything looks great, right? Learned that very, very young. And I never gave myself permission in those years to live from a place where it was what I loved, where it was what I wanted. And to live from that place, and all of that in turn caused me to feel very unseen. Anybody ever felt like that before? Like you're the only person in a room full of 100 people. By the end of high school, I had no other dreams or aspirations other than I literally just wanted to be married, I wanted to have a family, and I did love to travel, okay? And other than that, it was, my pastor says I should go to this school and that will make him happy, and so that's what I'm gonna go do. It was literally just whatever anybody else told me to do. Y'all know this girl, right? Okay. So I went to college in August, and I was literally engaged by November. Okay? When I took my kids to see this movie, I was like, hang on, Disney, there better be a plot twist really fast, because I identified with this crap of her falling in love in the first night, and we're gonna get married. And I also want to add a side note that any of you guys that have family members that have taken it on as their personal mission to make sure that whoever it is that you're going to bring into that family belonged there, making them earn their right to be there, you should be grateful for them, because my family took that on as their personal challenge to make sure that they ran this guy off really fast. They're probably cringing in the row right now, remembering. I made my sister miss mashed potatoes at Thanksgiving because they all came to North Carolina, and it's been 20 years, so. He moved back up here. It didn't last long. He was gone pretty quickly. And then by the next January, my parents begrudgingly allowed me to go back. I had a scholarship to go back, and I almost did it again. I wasn't engaged this time, and that relationship did not last. But after cramming 2 years of school into 3, I finished up, and I came back home trying to still paint the picture that everything was good, but I felt foolish, and I felt very embarrassed and humiliated, and no closer to being to what I thought I wanted than I had been when I left 3 years earlier. Fast forward to June 25th, 2003. It was the very first time I laid eyes on my husband. And truth be told, I was unimpressed at first. My cousin had moved down there, and she called me up, and she's like, when are you coming to visit? This was in Nashville. And I was like, I don't know why. And she's like, there's 2 guys I want you to meet. And I'm like, oh, I don't know. And I go down there, and the first guy she wanted me to meet, a bunch of us went on a camping trip, and he was not for me. And I was just like, okay, if this is who she thinks is my type, I'm not even meeting the second guy. I'm just not doing it. But we actually wound up being back at the same place together that weekend. And I was the first girl that he had ever asked out on a date the first time he met her. And he was interning in Nashville and living in Dallas, and I was in Ohio, but very seriously thinking about moving to Nashville. And so we went out, and actually 16 years ago to this day was the first time that we met. We met on June 29th. Yep, our first day will be tomorrow. And I went right into game mode. And don't hear me wrong, I was not intentionally trying to trick anybody. I wasn't intentionally playing anybody. That was not on purpose at all. But I had developed a knack since the beginning of my life of learning how to be exactly who I thought somebody wanted me to be. And I did it so well that he married me in 11 months. We joke around that God fully intended for us to be together, and he caused us to be married really fast before we got to know each other, because if we would have, we wouldn't have. And so the church that he'd been interning at in Nashville, did I tell you guys? I told you he was a pastor, right? I'm a pastor's wife. The reason we moved back up here 4 years ago was to plant a church. That's where I don't even know if I left that out. But he got hired back on full time at this church of 2,000 plus people, and we're both in our early 20s, and we bought a house, and our ministry is successful, and it's growing really quickly, and 3 years into it, we have our first baby, and everything is exactly what I wanted. Everything is happening exactly how I hoped it would be. And then a couple years after our daughter was born, I'm still feeling pretty unfulfilled and definitely unseen. He's a guy, he loved his job, he didn't do it on purpose, he just, you know how they do, right? And so, in the midst of all of that, someone began to see me. And while I had the moral fiber not to allow anything to happen that would have destroyed my marriage, my heart was definitely on the line. And he started to figure that out too. And nothing described myself and my situation better than the scene I'm about to share with you right here.
Lost, you don't even know what kind of eggs you like. Yes, that's right. With the priest, you wanted scrambled. With the deadhead, it was fried. With the other guy, the bug guy, it was poached. Now it's like, egg whites only. Thank you very much.
That is called changing your mind.
No, that's called not having a mind of your own. Maggie, what are you doing? You really want that guy up there to drag you up Annapurna for your honeymoon? You do not want to climb Annapurna!
Yes, I do!
No, you don't. You want a man who will lead you down the beach with his hand over your eyes, just so you can discover the feel of sand under your feet. You want a guy that wake you up at dawn. He's just bursting to talk to you. Can't wait another minute just to find out what he'll say. All right.
So 5 years into our marriage, I was faced with a choice to either pick myself up by the bootstraps again and wade through it and keep pushing like I always had, ignoring my emotions, ignoring how I felt, or I could begin to put in the work of figuring out what kind of eggs that I liked. Discover who I was, who God had divinely designed me to be, and then to begin to live from that place. I was 28 years old. For a seed to achieve its greatest expression, it has to come completely undone. Its shell cracks, the insides come out, everything changes. And for someone who doesn't understand growth, it would look like complete destruction. And completely destroyed was how I felt for a little bit, because life as I knew me completely died in those days. It was one of the most painful things that we had ever gone through and I had ever experienced emotionally. But it was the most necessary. And the fact that Reagan stuck with me the way that he did was nothing short of a miracle, because the woman that he thought he married was not the woman that she was completely gone. It was like I was finding myself in this early life crisis, and he would have had every reason to feel just lied to and betrayed. But in those moments, he became one of the most tangible ways that God has ever allowed me to feel what it's like to be truly known and truly loved. I allowed him to see me. If you've ever seen this quote before, I love it. To be loved and not known is comforting, right? It feels good, but it's superficial. To be known and not loved is our greatest fear, but to be fully known and fully loved, it liberates us from pretense, and it humbles us out of self-righteousness. It fortifies us for any difficulty that life can throw at us. And so as I allowed him to see me and to know me for who I was learning to be, and to realize how loved and affirmed that I was and accepted, a confidence and a passion began to grow in me, and I began to live from that person. And the resilience that lived in me, it began to be cultivated in ways that would change me forever. A belief was born in me that I was designed to do great things for a purpose. And that spiritually speaking, I was a daughter of the Most High God who had seen me and known me and loved me and would give me the power to do whatever it was that he was calling me to do. I also knew that I would have to be open and vulnerable about my story, because what was intended for my shame should have been and would be used to pull someone else out of that dark place. So from those examples, there's a few key things I want to give you, all right? I want to give you something to be able to take and something to do, because it's one great thing to tell you guys that it's possible, but I want to kind of walk you through how I've seen it happen in my own life and give you some things. Before we get to those, I need to ask you a question, all right? If I asked you if the idea of being vulnerable sounds like weakness to you, raise your hand. If that would be you, if it would make you feel weak. Okay? Now, how many of you would say that after the story I just shared with you that you view me as weak? You can if you need to. It's okay. Brene Brown can be quoted as saying that vulnerability is not weakness. The extent to which we are willing to be vulnerable is actually our most accurate measurement of courage, of innovation, of creativity, and of change. And so if you want things to change, you've got to be open about your stuff. Tennille is in here somewhere. She's going to talk about courage a little bit later, and I hope you guys will really lean into that. we want to think of courage as being brave, right? Doing something scary. And there is part of that is part of courage. But at the root of it, I hope I'm not stealing anything you're going to say, but courage finds its root in being able to share from your most open place in your heart, the most willing to being able to share from that place. Friends, there's freedom in that. And it's completely necessary to being able to develop this quality of resiliency in your life. Early on in my life, I would say that my perspective was on the right track. You pick yourself up by the bootstraps and you keep on pushing through, right? When things are tough, you don't let circumstances affect your joy. But here's something I've learned in the process, is that resilience is not just about pushing right through it and overcoming. It's actually about connecting with yourself and accepting what you find. Living in it, growing, making the corrections where needed, but learning from it, growing in it. And then when that happens, the overcoming is actually the byproduct. So when it's time to take action, the first stage and the step in doing that, all right? So here's the 3 or 4 things I'm going to give you, all right? Write these down, think about them. I've already told you about how I watched my parents live from a mindset and a perspective, right? That you always are looking for the good in things and you move forward from that point, right? Perspective is everything in that situation. But what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to experience it for yourself. You may have a person that you can watch and that will mentor you and that will walk alongside you in that, right? Or you may be reading a lot of books. You may be listening to podcasts, right? Whatever this looks like for you, you have to experience it for yourself by watching somebody and really trying to be able to internalize that, all right? I remember most recently specifically experiencing that and watching how my mom walked through her grief after Dad passed. It was different this time. I'll talk about that more in a minute. Anybody remember this? It was the first thing that came to mind, all right? When I talk about the second thing, is there's a second stage of learning and being able to train your brain, right? And being able to actually see change from this. And it's sort of like that inner recorder inside yourself, right? Where that song of experience, when you have the experience, when you take it and you turn it into that like lasting, like the real change in your brain. Without making a concerted effort to do this, there will be no lasting change. There will be no hope, there will be no healing. You've got to let it be internalized, all right, in your minds. And so here's the things that you can do in order to really get that recorded in your brain. You're going to extend it, all right? Now here's what I mean by that. Sit in it, feel it, make notes. One of the first ways I remember doing this, when I was trying to learn how to close a class, I listened to Teresa Harding's Close on YouTube at least 10 times. And I took notes, and then I'd go to a class and I would practice it. And then I would go back and I'd listen to it again. What did I miss? Okay, let's make a note here. So you extend it, you stay in it until it's able to be transferred into your long-term memory. It's as simple as that, you stay in it. Next thing is I want you to do is I want you to feel it in your body. What does it feel like to be resilient? To me, it feels peaceful. It feels like I got a plan. It feels like I've got a purpose. It feels like I remember what it was like when that didn't keep me down. And you're going to feel that. You're going to remember what that was like and go back there. And lastly, I want you to focus on it. What's rewarding about the experience? How could you possibly see something rewarding about your dad dying of cancer in his early 50s? But yet, if we really believe in our perspective that there's good in everything, and that's how we're going to bounce back and be resilient, then we're going to have to focus on it. What is the rewarding thing about whatever it is that you're walking through? You've just got to be intentionally looking for it. Now maybe you're sitting there and you're saying, you know what, I'm glad it worked out for you like you did with your husband, but my husband's gone, right? My marriage didn't make it. My health is not making it. Or maybe your husband is there in body, but maybe his heart's not with you. It's in those times where perspective sometimes requires some partnership and some perseverance. It's going to require some commitment, because sometimes it's going to get hard and it's going to be tough and it's going to be painful. And sometimes all the strength you're going to be able to muster up is the strength to ask for help. I did that back in January when I called Tamara and I was like, it's time. as my coach for the month. And it is one of the very best investments I ever made in myself. But not just in myself, in my family, in my business, in my work, in my ministry. You guys need to give yourself permission to acknowledge that it's okay to be wherever you are. That there's maybe some areas that you fail in, but you're not a failure. There's maybe some areas that you have been weak in, but you are not weak. When you understand that distinction, what you believe about yourself, that's when you give yourself the power to change it. That's when you give yourself the power to stop living in whatever is keeping you down and to bounce back stronger than you were before. I mentioned a little bit about my dad's cancer, and then it took his life in 2014. He was only 53 years old. And mom and dad had been married just shy of, 33 years? Did I get that right? Yeah. And so once again, I watched my mom wade through just the rubble of the destruction of losing dad, losing her high school sweetheart. And we all began to watch. There's 4 of us kids, and we're all married kids of our own. So we began to watch and try to walk through that with her as best we could. But there were some places that we just couldn't go. But to be able to watch her, it was noble. She went back to school right away at the age of 50, graduated after 18 months, and she's a licensed massage therapist, something she'd always been good at. Yeah, give her a round of applause. I think anatomy almost killed her. There she is studying for her last test. She was already really good at it, but now she could practice it. She could make a living from it. And I watched her walk through, though, this difficulty a little differently than I had seen her deal with difficult things before, because when she needed to, she sat in it. And she felt it. Until there was time for her to be able to get up and move on from it. She extended it. Her resilience was still at work, and even though the outcome had not been what we all wanted to be, she accepted it and began looking forward for the next good thing that God had for her. Now, I also mentioned that my husband and I moved back here about 4 years ago, and in 2015 as church planners. All right, this is what we spent 12 years on staff at a phenomenal church in Nashville, and we planted a church back here in 2015, started with about 40 people in our basement, and it quickly grew over a couple years, and so we bought this building right off I-75. It used to be Granger Industrial Parts, and right now we're in the throes of renovation. We've got one phase through, and it's not going to kill us. I know it's not going to kill us, but sometimes it definitely makes me feel like I may never want to build a house. I used to think I wanted to build a house. I don't think I want to do that anymore. But much of the demo for that place in the first phase has been done by volunteers, much of the rebuilding of this. And one team in particular came up from Goldsby, Oklahoma, with actually my husband's mom's church, all right? And so all these people, they keep coming back for like year after year. If we needed help with kids stuff, if we needed help building out our office, whatever it was, they were really, really gifted at construction. So if there was building that needed to be done, they would come up, all right? And so I'm actually pretty handy when it comes to like doing moderate construction, right? Something else I got from my mom. I actually got it from my dad too. We like to cut down trees together. If you can't see, this is us taking down 20-foot big old fir trees in my backyard, right? This is us laying all of the new flooring in my house, all right? So we like to do this kind of stuff together. It's fun for us. And so when this team from Oklahoma was in town helping us to demo this building, it was very natural for me to be there. And one of the guys on this team, in particular, I had known him as an acquaintance, a few years. He's in his early 50s, and he was up there on this trip working, and I got this idea. I thought, I wonder if Mom and Kenny might hit it off. And so I just did the only natural, normal thing, because I didn't want it to be awkward. So I said, hey, we're demoing the building, Mom. Come up here and help us work, because that's what we do, right? And so she said, I'm not doing anything. And she came up, and my notes are getting twisted here. And so the story that was written for them over the course of the next year was a really sweet one. And they were married in March. Aww. Now, why do I share this with you guys? I would give anything to have my dad back. Not a thing you could do about it. So we all had a choice to make. And Mom could have parked herself in the devastation. And the fact that my young dad losing his life at such an early age was not fair, before he even got to know half his grandkids. Because that's true, right? It's true, it is what it is. But deciding to do something with what she did have control over, and that was her perspective. She stayed in it for as long as she needed to, she accepted it, and then she got up and she kept looking for the next good thing. Death and loss happened to her, but it does not define her. And she was the only one that could make sure of that. So I'm going to ask you one more time. What do you want from your life? Is there something about your perspective, about what it is that you think that you want, that needs to grow today? And are you letting lies about who everyone else says that you are determine who you think you are? Or can you start to let go? Now, letting go does not mean that you're giving up. It does not mean that you're taking that frenetic, chaotic energy out of the situation. It does mean, it means that you're taking your frenetic, chaotic energy out of the situation and you're releasing the outcome. Can you guys tell it's time to be done? You're seeing yourself in a new light. And when you can start to live from that place, it doesn't matter what knocks you down.